Hello, everyone, and we're back. And finally, we get to hear Dalia finish her story, or at least not be interrupted. Hi, Dalia.
Hi, Dan. How's it going?
I was uh, I was playing with subtitles for our lecture series here on the real story of Thoth. And I just think in terms of movie potential, we have some, we started with Reluctant Messiah, but then we said maybe. and then we have the return of Isa. I mean, or when the rapture comes, you do not want to be the left behind. We have so many great subtitles. And now the subtitle that Dalia and I were just talking about for today's dance was something like Thoth and the Immortality Machine, or Recipes for Life Ever After. Don't you think that we got great movie material here, Dalia? What do you say?
I think so. I think it will make for a great science fiction series, maybe.
and and the other thing I wanted to say is I
Yeah.
figured out why Thoth adopted Dalia. I figured it out. You know why?
Why?
It's because he likes her. No, no,
I guess that's right. Yeah.
no, actually, she's in the bloodline, and very Egyptian and all that story. But also, she figured out how to have seriously dedicated bliss experiences, like in your Hawaii thing, and so that enabled, a certain, and there, you do have the family connection. Oh, you could say all 4 billion humans have a family connection. So,
Yeah. We all do. And the bloodline is spread out, the
yeah,
DNA. We are all connected in some way.
yeah.
I guess. Yeah. I feel like on my soul essence, which is the galactic space traveler, that is a falcon, like Horus. He looks like Horus. And also Ra has been represented that way, like a falcon head. Half, the bird tribe. You can call them the bird tribe. You often use that term. Um, he's done this many times. I know this on a soul level, that higher self I have done this before. Even the entire thing about the Book of the Dead and all the trials, this is all very experiential. And I know my soul have experienced these trials before. Has to do with space travel and has to do with making a successful journey from
Hmm.
the heart of the sun to the star. If you know tarot, there's the star card, the eight-pointed star. And this is a central topic that I actually want to talk about in detail at some point, using imagery that I'm actually preparing for and doing my homework now to get like a series of images that can reflect
Hmm.
these places and the destination.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
it really has to do with soul growth and space travel.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
and that leads us to the theme. So sort of what we selected for the first themes for today were that by request, and many people have it. People are very interested. I mean, obviously, if we're right that Thoth obviously was the bloodline of Jesus, was the bloodline of Tutankhamun, was the bloodline of the Templars, literally, and we presented the Templar story last time, then it's correct that people should be absolutely interested in what is the science here. And then Dahlia made that wonderful comment when she said, well, what he's actually cooking up here is a recipe for immortality. I mean, like, how do you get sustainable? And the other question that people keep asking was for you to tell more about that story of how you saved the graveyard and how you saved the schoolyard. So we
Yeah.
thought maybe some of those themes for the first part for Dahlia, and then I prepared a slideshow more on the science of Thoth. But first, Dahlia.
Yeah, so I want to say that after, the Kundalini experience started, which is the transfiguration, I began to connect with Thoth on a much greater level in terms of his living essence, which I call Ka. I mean, it's an ancient Egyptian term, and the reason that I use that term is because it gets pretty ritualistic once I get into the sort of the theta state and I get prepared to go to bed and my body relaxes. There's a series of actual body movements, and body movements in terms of like vortex dynamics that can plug you in into the higher array or the higher aura of what you want to call the immortal one, which is your
And
higher self.
involuntary body movements are often associated with kundalini. And I think that description is excellent about embedding in the larger array of the larger bodies. It makes sense.
Yeah. And all of the ancient, when you see the ancient Egyptian one, you know, in the sarcophagus, they're doing this. This is a very common body position that happens to me, that I go under in my transfiguration process. This is another one as well, like the Ka. So there are various like body movements that correlate to certain energy dynamics. So after this process started, I began to connect with Thoth, his Ka, his life essence, and he started to work through me, through my vessel, using my right hand, like I mentioned before, as a staff or a scepter, that so to speak. And I know I'm not the only one. I've been actually speaking to, you know, quite a few people that use similar energy work to clear the land, to do shamanic work with clearing the, you know, the locked in spirits that are trapped, that trapped plasma, like we call it. Like it's work that I know shamans have been doing all throughout. And I've been engaging with that work as well, with Thoth. And the first thing he sent me to do, because there is a way of just allowing, this is a very interesting process of allowance. It's not mental. So you allow yourself to have your higher self guide you to where you need to go, right? So this is what I do. And there is an act, it's an act of submission, which comes from total trust. And this trust that I have in my higher self, slash God, slash whatever you want to call it, right? Because these terms are interchangeable. And I'm not talking about the ultimate all creator God that is unknowable. I'm talking about higher self, higher dimensional being, immortal being, that is also a creative being and a creator in some way. But it's not the ultimate all, you know, unknowable
Mhm.
source of the
And
universe. Yeah.
did you want to say again just how you knew and what it felt like the first time you knew that it was Thoth?
Yeah, it has been a process because yeah, I have asked because you know the spaceship experience. I was in the body of a man, and I didn't know who that was. I didn't, like I said, there are no names involved. It's like you're in the scene already. Things are happening, and so it's an act of questioning. And I began to question who is this, who is this, who is this, and they of course guided me to read certain books about you know the ancient Sumerian history, which is documented historical artifacts that are found in Sumerian. So, or in cuneiform. So that I'm familiar, that I have the language for certain names. And after I've read and did my research, and a lot of the things that I read about the hybridization, the fusion experiment, when human DNA was mixed with the Anunnaki DNA, which is these higher dimensional beings that came from another planet, from outer space. Um, this matched a lot of my experiences. And so I began to resonate much more with the history, and I learned the names. And then he pointed me to who he was. He kept saying his name, Ningizdira, Ningizdira, Ningizdira. Anytime I would ask who that man on the spaceship that I was in the consciousness witnessing this immortality process as it takes place, he kept telling me Ningizdira, Ningizdira, Ningizdira. And that's how I knew. And I didn't know that Ningizdira was Thoth or Tahuti. I remember I was talking to you one day and I was telling you this is Ningizdira. And you're the one who pointed to me that Ningizdira is Thoth.
Exactly, exactly.
I was like,
In the
okay,
Sumerian
that makes
school.
sense. That
Yeah,
makes perfect sense because, you know, I come from Egypt, and for the longest time I've been in touch with ancient Egyptian deities, like Isis, for example. And I spoke about that in the first interview we did. But and then there was this another stage of understanding that had to do with something beyond ancient Egypt, something pre-ancient Egypt, which is the Sumerian heritage and the Sumerian history. And it felt like I'm disconnected, like, oh, all of a sudden I'm not connected to Egypt and I'm just studying the Anunnaki history, and that's when things connected for me. When I realized that, wait a minute, these are the same deities that later went to ancient Egypt. And then that entirely made sense to me, because that then explains
Yeah, it all fits together.
action.
We
Exactly.
knew at that time that the Thoth lineage was the Templar lineage. The Thoth, which is Thutmosis, the name of the royal line of Egypt. Tahuti also is the name of the Grail King line, is also the name of the line of David, is also the name of the Jesus line. And that maybe then brings us to, I don't know if you want to talk about it now, but that
Yeah.
Thoth obviously or apparently asked for your help in processing the traumatic deaths of Tutankhamun and Isa Jesus.
Yeah, I wouldn't say he asked for my help. It's so much more like I submit and he sends me what I need to see. And he's the one that's really managing my experience.
Hmm.
Not him by himself, but he's the main higher guide for me. So I wouldn't say that there is consent. As long as I give consent, I don't know where the process is going to take me, because it's much larger than my human understanding. So I'm kind of taking the path one step at a time. So after we started working together with the shamanic healing, and this is what I'm sort of trying to tell that story, prefacing the entryway. I know it spirals, but this is non-linear stuff, so it's hard to stay with just one point, because it's all kind of connected in a way. But in terms of my human linear timeline of events, I started Thoth started working through me with clearing the land, and in parallel he was also showing me the past life memories and who he was in previous incarnations, which he showed me many deities, reincarnations, not just in ancient Egypt, but also in Mesoamerica and the Mayans. The presence, namely Quetzalcoatl, and you have spoken about this, but he showed me the ancient astronauts. So my true essence is, like I said, the space navigator, what you can see in the Mayan, the
Mhm.
Teotihuacan and all these ancient artifacts, the space traveler, the ancient astronauts. This is also him.
Yeah. And we said how beautiful that fit the Quetzalcoatl, Viracocha, and the book Tutankhamun Prophecies, which identifies directly the Tutankhamun with the Quetzalcoatl, Viracocha. They know it's the same bloodline. So the fact that you were shown from the inside out,
Yes.
I found that just stupefying. I was so impressed. And then when you started telling the details of the death of Tut and Isa from inside view, I was like,
Me too, by the way, because I would never imagine that the stuff that I'm channeling or experiencing, or the memories that I'm being downloaded into me, I would never imagine that there are studies made about that and that is historically documented. Like, the human intellectual part of me would have never figured that out. It's not something that I read about. I'm not studied into that too much. I'm pretty much, I like to keep myself like a blank slate and open, just focus on my direct experience, so that I'm not very influenced by, but this is the knowledge that you brought to me and also helped me make sense of my experiences
oh,
in a very, like, what are you talking about? Everything that I'm telling you, you're saying that this is written and people have already made these connections through
yeah.
their findings. That for me is mind-blowing as well. And I'm very happy about that. And this can't be a coincidence. The
Oh,
fact that you and I, we came in together, and
I
yeah.
was led to have that, that swoon experience in the gold sarcophagus in Cairo of Tutankhamun, and I embedded in a bunch of those memories, and it was way too much for me, and I did not have the dedication, actually, that Dalia has to actually embed. Well, so, but do you want to just do the brief review of what you think then the implications are of what you learned about the death of Tut in terms of?
Oh, yeah. I feel like it's a kind of a dark spot in history. It's a major blind spot, I think, in the collective consciousness,
Yeah.
that I feel, for reasons larger than me, that are meant to really be let out and to be shared.
Mhm.
I was walking around and I saw that shop, and they sell like papyrus, like with ancient Egyptian deities painted onto them. And there's this huge one that I see in the glass window every time I walk by it, and it's Tut and Nefertiti in the same picture. And I'm like, this is not correct. This is unsettling for me. Because essentially Nefertiti was a stepmother for Tut, and she was one of the conspirators that actually led to him being murdered. She was present in the room when I was being killed, as Tut. And it's like, how dare you? How dare
Hello,
you?
hello. Yeah, let's like correct some of the history here. Well,
Let's
so
correct. Yeah, we cannot just super fantasize about all these ancient Egyptian, and also almost deify them. I feel like Nefertiti, she has been deified for her beauty, but at the same time, the character that she was nothing, was everything that's far from that, at least in my experience as Tut.
and so do you want to just say, so a lot of historians have speculated that it was that general who was involved in killing Tut. Was it was the name of
Was
the
I.
yeah.
Yeah, because it's these
Historians
these
know that.
memories they come there pretty, I wouldn't say it's not like 4D quality in terms of like everything is clear in details. It's I feel presences. I do not see faces because I think my logical memory, my cognitive memory as Dalia, doesn't know these people. I haven't dealt with them, but I get shown presences and the action, what's happening.
Mhm.
And then I am guided then to understand, to put one and two together. So who was this person that came and he put the poison in my eye that led to my death, my very traumatic death. And who is this other man? So there were two people, two males, and Nefertiti, she was on my left side, and this man coming on from my right side, and he's the one who murdered me. And I believe the two men that were present, it's the military, it's Horam Heb,
Foreman.
that's his name.
Yeah,
I believe the military general,
who took
and
over later, who took over later. So the
yes, they
next
both took
pharaohs in
over
a row,
later.
the next pharaohs in a row all lined up to help murder Tut. Hello. And a lot of historians speculated, but the fact that Dahlia saw in great detail personally from inside how this happened and why, and
Yeah,
also then
it was I. I'm pretty sure it was I, the older priest type person.
yeah, who would have
And the
been,
younger guy later, I know he took power, but he was part of the conspiracy as well.
who I originally considered that line of the family, the Amun priests, which I associate with Enlil versus the Enki side of the family. And Dahlia has a lot of insight there too. But
Yeah.
but
It
the
seems to me that the entire Egypt and Africa was part of the Enki.
uh,
So the Enki
yeah,
family. So Enki and Ra is the son of Enki. And all of the other deities, Horus, Isis, and Seth, it's all part of the Enki
so,
family line.
mhm.
Doesn't mean that they have not interacted with the Enlil family line as well, but Egypt is pretty much part of it was all
Mhm.
Enki side of the family.
And to relate what Dolly was saying earlier about the quote unquote pre-Egyptian, what in Egypt was called the time of Zep-Tepi, which was kind of, they thought, call it pre-Pharaonic, but actually, there's calendars of millions of years of kings at that point. So the Zep-Tepi points to an earlier, which we believe makes the Sumerian connection. We now know that Sumerian language is literally Anunnaki language, Old Anak. And I think Elena got that right. So, these pictures from our history studies suddenly now fit what Dahlia is having,
Yeah, it's incredible. Speaking of language, I actually thought I was shown just a few days ago an entire, almost looks like the chemistry, the timetable for the chemistry timetable for all the elements. It's
the
it's
platonic, yes,
huge.
the platonic solids nested, which
Yeah,
is the atomic table.
but what I've been shown is like a table that is even like twice or three times bigger than that, and it has the language, but it has letters. Like he showed me the cuneiform or the Anak language, and it's equivalent in the Arabic language because that's my mother tongue. My main language is Arabic, and he's shown me way more letters than we have. Like we have on average 26, 28. And I've seen, I can't even count, but I would say more than 200, 250 symbols and letters, and
Yes.
very nuanced.
And we remind here that, and we'll play some animations in a bit. So when we derived Hebrew from the spiral on the, where's my donut here? I had my donut out. The spiral on the torus, the shadows indexed by tetra, we got Hebrew, but we also then derived an Arabic script. And what we realized was that these were simply the angles of the spiral on a torus because they were telling you how to embed vortices platonically, which is the atomic table. And the superset of that was the Ophanim Enochian, which leads us to Stargate. And we have that picture handy as well. Maybe this is a time I should do some of those slides then, should I?
I think that sounds great. And then after I can talk about the graveyard experiences and the
Yes.
part, because
Yes.
then we would have seen the visuals before. I think that's great.
People want to know how you healed the graveyard and the schoolyard. Absolutely. Oh yeah, thank you. Thank you. The other, so this spiral on this donut, if you index the tilt by the tetra cube, you have not just Hebrew, but you have the nest to embed the beginning of the atomic table. And the superset of that, the hypercube, dodecacosa, is Ophanim Enochian, the angel, how angel bodies are assembled, and how the movie Stargate was written. And that's where our slideshow, yes, that's where our slideshow is supposed to go to. So today's slideshow is called the Thoth Talk. Oh, yes. So are you seeing a Stargate?
Yes.
Good. So this is the movie Stargate. Rick Hasson, my collaborator at when I helped co-found Gaia TV, helped produce the movie Stargate. And this is the Ophanim Enochian alphabet here, whose index to symmetry is the superset dodecacosa, which is 5 spins, 7 spins. 5 spins is dodecacosa, and the 7 spins is dodecacosa. No, 5 spins dodecacosa, 7 spins is tetracubic. And you put the 5 spins inside the 7 spins, the Ophanim sigil of truth, and you have the Anu, the slipknot heart of the sun, and you have how to angle the donuts to implode into a Stargate. and actually, I had been working with Vincent Bridges with this for many years, and actually, you know, the original Bon Po, you know, Bon Po, the bonfire. The bonfire was actually, and this leads us to see that shadow of the spiral spinning, the Bon Po actually became literally the Holy Grail animation. And that implosion is what these alphabets were about. So nesting these vortex one inside the other, and that recursion implosion is how you create consciousness. So the previous lecture that Dalia and I did, entitled The Many Reincarnations of Thoth, here we're standing beneath a Templar lord, right, in the village next to us in South France, and so this series was entitled, you know, I've done the new history of Thoth many times, but the point was this caduceus here, called Hermetic, literally Hermes Thoth. The theme of this slideshow is if you take that caduceus, which here is the harmonics of the Schumann resonance here, the harmonics called PlanckFire.com here, perfect implosion, phase conjugation, fractal charge collapse, and the harmonics of brain waves, and the harmonics how you design a pyramid and a dolmen to charge collapse and implode. So the point of this whole lecture summary is that caduceus from Hermes Thoth, you know, Dalia has seen inside those incarnations, and I'm not that close, but I, in a certain humble way, claim to be one of the science officers for Thoth on this planet.
I love that. Yes, sounds about right.
This will be my claim to fame. I'm claiming to be a current science officer for Thoth, teaching this physics. So that caduceus, called PlanckFire.com, that fractal phase conjugate charge collapse and specific frequency signature is the only measurement and definition of whether your tree, Schumann harmonics, your heart, your EEG, your brain, your breath, your sacrocranial, your dolmen obelisk, your cozy rev mirror, your pyramid, your cathedral is working and immortal. It's how you measure whether any of those things work. And it's also whether your fire crystal, your mercury vortex, your Therify medbed, your healing plasma, or your Templar grid, or your fabric of time, or your Stargate is working. All of those things function after you measure that frequency signature, because that is charge collapse. That's how you define it. For example, the Earth is pulsating every 26 seconds, happens to be 0.1 hertz. That's the Mayer wave. That is Planck fire. And there's the famous 52 hertz whale, the 53 hertz, which we measured in every pyramid, Bosnia, et cetera, where 1 million people a year are getting rejuvenation. So we're very experienced at measuring that frequency signature.
Dan, can you speak more about the 52? Because I was reading that 52 is the magical number of Thoth in the Mayan calendar of the ɁAW-RE calendar.
Yeah, well, it's a fifth.
And the tokens, yeah.
52 is one of the key years of the cycle. Of course, me being born in 52, I was always resonate to that. But whether the 52 years is related to 52 hertz, you have to do some dimensional analysis. But it is a resonant.
What does it refer to in terms of the 52 hertz whale?
Well, there's the most famous, it's called The Loneliest Whale. It's one of the more famous movies that they have gone all over the planet finding this whale, which is famous for singing at 52, 53 hertz. And hello, here's exactly where we measured 53 hertz in almost every pyramid, sacred site, sacred dome, biologic architecture, everywhere. Because that is the Schumann cascade, actually, which is Planck fire and the 0.1 hertz. So 52, we know why the 52 hertz whale was singing at the 52 hertz, and the people that made the movie don't, and that's a problem. It's perfect embedding, and that's what this whole slideshow is about, is you get that life force when you get charge collapse, implosion, which is, of course, romantic. And this is the geometry of perfect birth canal and the geometry of the touch that says, I love you, where the max pressure arrives at 0.618 into the duration of that event. And this is a little section that I didn't get to in the last little dance. So Thoth's Emerald Tablet is a 38,000-year-old alchemist guidebook, famously as above, so below, which obviously is a name for fractality. And so when I wrote my second book, almost 50 years ago, am I that young? I don't know. My editor at the time said, well, you just wrote a new Emerald Tablet. And he actually did a complete analysis of the comparison of the Emerald Tablet, interpreted in truth as above, so below, just as things proceed from unity, they embed the Father as the Son, separate from earth and fire, the subtle, the growth. You emerge from the subtle, from the gross into the subtle with this care to focus. So this is all the Hermes Trismegistus, and the translations of the Emerald Tablet actually are famously related to perfect fractality, which is perfect compressibility. So what I wrote is the universe is made of one substance. The compressibility of that universal medium stores form and memory and wave shape. The universe has one shape, the sine wave becomes a donut, etc. So I wrote my own Emerald Tablet, which I didn't know was an Emerald Tablet, almost 50 years ago in my second book. So, and this is where we talked about the return of Thoth and the many incarnations of Thoth. Actually, the name of Thoth applied to Tahuti, Thoth, Viracocha, Quetzalcoatl. And so in these columns, you have the famous reincarnations of the family of the Anak, and we've been through that conversation. So the point is, in each of those cases, Thoth was teaching us to identify charge collapse, as, for example, here in how the famous EM drive, electromagnetic gravity maker, makes gravity, is because the cascade implodes and spits out coherent longitudinal at the center. And how that coherent charge implosion, the side view, is the caduceus, converts the transverse to the longitudinal wave, which defines gravity waves and defines the grid, and the array is coherent longitudinal interferometry. And that's where the ancestor memory lives. That is physicsofsoul.com, which we keep coming back to when we hear Dalia's stories. So, for example, whether it's Schauberger's piezo water vortex making gravity or the mercury vortex making gravity, it's the angle of the vortex of charge collapse, which is converting the transverse EMF in the vortex, because the implosion angle is correct, to spit out coherent longitudinal EMF directionally, defining gravity and how gravity is made in the vortex and defining how to perfect those vortex. It answers questions like, now we know why they had to use the iron powder to make the mercury red. It became more flux permissive. And we know why they had to use a trace level of radioactivity, because that made it quasi superconductive. So we know exactly how this gravity was made, and we can learn all that if we learn Thoth's lesson about the Glocka. And that slideshow is, we've done that on other occasions. But the point is, once you know how a vortex makes gravity, you can pay your debt to gravity. the EM drive. And this is that the rate of the tilt of these precessional angles, the galactic equator with the solar equator, the precession, those equators nutate and precess, and they embed, and that embedding creates a phase relationship between the long wave, the galactic equator, and the solar equator. And when that implodes, the Earth, the sun, and the galactic equators nutate and precess. And when they reach a right angle, that's called the erection of the Holy Cross, which is the physics of rapture, literally inhabiting the center of that implosion. And thus, you do not want to be the left behind to inhabit the rapture. The other part of this slideshow is just a review of what we talked about last time, which is, remember when I'm making this film series now with Tony Rodriguez, where he realized that the reason the obelisks were functional nodes for remote viewing and were very critically spaced from the water, and therefore healing and fertilizing that water from the longitudinal, which squirts out from the center of that obelisk, just like it squirts out from the center of the fire crystal and heals water. So he learned from me that it's because of the longitudinal array relationship that you get the physics of telepathy and remote viewing. And all of these nodes, whether obelisks or pyramids, are serving the same function. They're concentrators for the charge compression, which is the longitudinal array. And we're not going to do this thing today about the Cardassians inhabiting the vortex at the center of planets, but these are the Kuldas. And I think Elena did get that right, that the reason that Thoth is back here now is because the plasma vortex at the center of our planet is waking up and is navigable and steerable. It has the same plasma geometry as the human heart. So the plasma vortex, which navigates the center of Nibiru, navigates the center of the moon, and the center of the Earth, and the center of the sun. They're all the same plasma vortex called Anu, and that's another day. So the technology, which is firecrystal.com, remember, at the center of Enki's Poseidon vortex. What do they call Enki's projector again? The sword.
The trident?
Yeah, the trident. Thank you. So at the center of the trident is this crystal. It's a piezoelectric implosion, and it has this frequency signature called firecrystal.com, P-H-I-R-E. And the frequency signature of that crystal can be triggered by the same phase conjugate, piezofire.com, in this caduceus cascade. So the same Schumann phase conjugate pump wave, which makes pyramids work and makes your Bliss work and makes Stargates work and make trees work, is this frequency signature identifiable as charge collapse. And when you trigger a crystal using a piezofire.com oscillator with the exact cascade or with your breath, the frequency signature you need is here. It's this caduceus we just talked about. So this is just the Hermes story revisited. And so the whole story of Hermes designing the pyramid is him using what was called the Hummer to implode the charge of the Earth in a way that produced global wireless power, which also is the global wireless array of ancestor memory. Oh yeah, here's the trident, the trident or parallel Vajra. So the crystal at the center, there's a little ring or clip, and I think Elena did get this right, that when you squeezed it, it released under great pressure this piezoelectric hammer that hit the crystal correctly to make that frequency signature. And this is the physics behind firecrystal.com, and we're just launching this product line parallel to piezofire.com. And so this then explains how the famous Kosi frost crystal worked in the fire crystal of Atlantis, which was named Thoth Tahuti Thule. And so the frequency signature was called warp drive, is this charge collapse, and is identifiable and it's teachable. So this is the idea of this 3D and
Nest revolve, golden mean ratio sine waves, and the
cause of gravity
becomes alive.
And so this is the frequency signature I identified by equation for fire crystals here, plankfire.com. And these are the frequencies Dan Willis simplistically said would cause your crystal to go after I told them to use the equation, which is an approximation, in this case, Fibonacci cascade. And the point is that Fibonacci is not the wave mechanics. That is a simplification which is not helpful. The actual wave mechanics is precisely golden ratio, because that's what actually makes the charge collapse, which makes fire crystals work and makes human bliss work. And here, this was from Tufan, showing the relationship between Fibonacci and golden ratio. So this gets into then how bliss drives your DNA, just like the z-axis of the quartz imploding, the z-axis of your DNA, piezoelectrically, is imploded by the low frequency harmonics of human bliss. Again, all of this is at the firecrystal.com background science. And here's the ultimate trigger tool for these devices, piezofire.com, which uses a piezoelectric device to make precisely that complex implosive waveform, which is charge collapse perfected. And so this was the lecture we gave, that gaining energy during charge collapse, which now we know we have learned to do that from Thoth. This is Thoth science. And when we get back to Dalia here in a minute, we're going to see that this ability to sustainably gain energy during charge collapse, the only actual physics of bliss, is the beginnings of the recipe for immortality, sustainable implosion, and sustainable bliss. And for example, when you say Om correctly, if you say Om correctly, what have you made? Here's the frequency signature. You have made implosion, the definition of actual all peacemaking. And this is from the physics.planckfire.com. And we're not going to do all that science today, but this was the crystal from the starship, and here's how it's triggered, and here's how a warp drive worked. It was all based on this charge implosion. This is a nice graphic because it exactly shows how precisely this is the physics of the spine liquid pump working, driven by the breath, the tidal frequencies of the spine liquid sacrocranial, the only physics of kundalini, the only actual physics of bliss, literally are precisely by equation charge collapse working in the spine liquid, which is literally driving the Schumann into the brain waves. So we're seeing the physics of bliss, and here's the physics of Schumann cascade as a phase conjugate pump wave, measured in a very, very happy tree. And we go into the physics of photosynthesis, which we proved is the exact same charge collapse. So photosynthesis only happens when the purple and orange are exactly the right frequency, very narrow knots, what'll make photosynthesis, which happen to be exactly golden ratio times Planck, proof that phase conjugation is the reason photosynthesis exists. And later we extend that, prove that's the reason color exists. And so then we use that frequency signature, predict remote viewing and soul. So I'm not going to do the whole slideshow here, but here we actually, I think we can get to the Stargate story here, where we measure Jean-Charles Moyen making that cascade from alpha to gamma just before he replicably teleports with witnesses, came back from star with sand between his toes. So we now know what a Stargate is. In fact, now I'm going to stop this share because I've carried on too long. But just to review, can we electrical engineers now say exactly what makes a Stargate work? And I can say, after being the person who designed the measurement with Jean-Charles Moyen, who replicably teleports repeatedly with witnesses, comes back with sand between his toes, the frequency signature from the beach. By the way, the beach is where the longitudinal coherence is. So the frequency signature from his alpha to his gamma was precisely that cascade of implosion, allowing him to embed in the array with great density the same frequency signature we measure regularly from kids who are learning to see without their eyes, except the amplitude of the coherence of his alpha to gamma was off the charts. So he gained a lot of inertia centripetally, enabling him to be in that array, evidence being also that as he's about to teleport, he would always see where he was with one eye and where he was going with the other eye. He remembers that vividly. And now we know why, because the imploding center going into that array is right in the center where the pine cones kiss noses, and brings us nicely to where Dalia said, when you go into the Stargate and you reach that center, get leverage on the array.
Yeah. It's interesting. I just received some information when you said the Om, when you say it correctly, Ayum. So there is one of the divine names in Islam or in Arabic. It's Qayyum, ₦,
Ah.
and it means, the specific meaning, you know, it could be multi-layered, but ₦ is the one who lifts up or rises up or ascends, or like as if you're sitting on a couch and then you will lift yourself up and stand. This is the act of ₦, but it's also qiyama. The noun for ₦ is qiyama, which is the word for the end of days. When they talk about the Armageddon or the harvest or the end of days, the day of judgment, they refer to it by qayyum, which I think it makes sense now.
Yeah, because it's the reason that the spectrum analysis of a properly pronounced if you said that correctly with the quality of grace, the A is harmonic inclusive, the E is harmonically exclusive, so it creates that separation, and the O is AU, and the U is the pure tone at the climax still point. So the spectrum analysis of a properly pronounced Om, IUM, is actually literally the caduceus leading to an implosive still point. That's why it is the physics of peacemaking, peaceuniversity.net, which is how to embed into the still point leverage on the array, and relating to what you said about
some kind of an
you
assessment process, and day of judgment is essentially physics. It's not about what people think it is.
Exactly. Thank you for saying that. That makes my day to hear you say that.
Yeah.
Yes. And so literally that's why, you know, successful death, you see the lattice cobweb tunnel spiral every time. Your DNA is teaching you to implode and embed in the still point of the array, which is the longitudinal array, the only physics of ancestor memory as any Aboriginal now really knows. So embedding in the stillness of that array, unpacking into a larger array, is the physics, and I do mean physics, recipe to the sustainability we call immortal, like when the rapture comes, don't be left behind. It also gets us into the release of ghosts, which is, I think, where you were going with this as well.
Yeah, we could go two ways. We could speak about that event, the Judgment Day, or we could speak first about the ghosts. And I think that's a good idea.
Your choice. Your choice. Yes, yes.
So the first thing that Thoth took me to do is where I was staying was close by one of the cemeteries, like right by Mauer Park, the wall, where the wall used to be.
Berlin Wall.
Berlin Wall. Mm-hmm. And he took me there, and I was walking, didn't know where I was going. First, we worked at the park right next door to me. The thing is, he works with the magnetic fields, the flower of life pattern, and creates a magnetic field, a protective magnetic field of, you know, fractal harmonics in that park. It's as if he were casting a net over the entire place.
Yeah, I think because he has a really powerful magnetic body would be my guess, which is
I've actually experienced what it's like to be embedded into his life essence, the before and after, and I have to say the before is pretty miserable. I cannot stay disconnected now. It feels miserable to me to be in my old reality, and I feel enhanced and in my glow aura if I am connected to him, to his higher array, to his life essence, to his aura. And I have to do this every time I'm traveling. I have to plug into the array of the field, the land. I do it through grounding. So I plug in, this is where the serpents and the kundalini, well, the earth has its own plasma beings, its own dragons or serpents, the magnetic lines, but also, you know, the core of the earth. But what I think is happening, what I'm perceiving to be happening is that I am working with the plasma beings of the land. So any country I go to, I do a ritual that he does, where I plug my aura into the larger aura, and I sort of wrangle the serpents, and the plasma beings.
It's a cracking of a whip, cracking a whip.
Not exactly.
That's what a caduceus is.
It's not that simple. But it's an act of becoming almost one with the plasma beings.
Mm-hmm.
the more I do it, the more it becomes visible to me. So last thing I did was here in Egypt, and it's as if I have to be one with that serpent being, and it kind of vortexes itself around me. It spins around me and becomes part of me in a way. And
Okay,
it's not a very, it doesn't feel very good, like, when I'm doing it, but the end result of it is you're able to walk in fractality per se, and you're able then to sort of harmonize the wind flow and the weather patterns to a certain extent, so what has become clear to me is using the same technology is how you would also move the wind and part the clouds and instigate rain. And all this is kind of the work that he's been working with through me, training me to do.
Yes. So I was having trouble with the old Dalai Lama. How do you make a hot dog for the Dalai Lama? Make me one with everything. But bad joke. But actually, as Valerie explained, that when you take refuge in the plasma of the body of the Tibetan master, you take on a certain responsibility in that you can't be bad or he'll have to kick you out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
There is a certain level of pure intention and purity
think your
of heart.
thoughts. Exactly.
Absolutely. And also the shareable wave, like there's no selfishness per se. Not that you're not self-loving, because it does require a degree of self-love and prioritizing the self. And this self-love is really an initiation to your relationship to your own personal God, so to speak, or to your own personal higher self, to understand your own divinity as it relates to a larger being. Ideally immortal. I feel like anybody can have access to the immortal beings. It depends which family line they come from and who they're connected to. But the earth existence is very like small, and it's very short, and it's disconnected from memory. And people always struggle with this. Why do we come here? Why do we forget? And the veil is thick. And if the earth is spinning in fractality, if it's successfully spinning in fractality, people would remember.
Yeah.
They would. Yeah, and I'm the proof of that.
Let's
Not
pass,
only me,
let's
people
pass
would remember.
let's
Yeah.
pass the recipe on to Graham Hancock, who says we're a species with amnesia. The same guy who says the Apkallu came down to save every civilization and forgets that every one of those arrivals was Thoth.
Yeah. I mean, it's the whole family. I would say like it's a family, because I'm not working just with Thoth, and also Horus is the space traveler. He's an important presence, because he's the one that the actual space travel, because Thoth can do things remotely, so to speak. But with Horus, the Falcon, he made all that journey. I want to give him some credit, and he's my soul essence. He's very important to my story, at least, and his presence also within the Mesoamerican culture. Because yes, Thoth is a presence, but there's also Ra, and there's also the son of Ra, Horus, and also the female deities as well. So it depends, but yeah, the space traveler is the Falcon, and they're all bird people and travelers, so to speak. So
Return to the bird tribe. Guess where?
yeah,
Ken Carey, Cherokee, the Iroquois, same story. Quetzalcoatl,
yeah,
serpent bird man. And Quetzalcoatl was always the serpent, and the bird was always the other side of the family. And when the serpent feeds the eagle, Quetzalcoatl returns. And that is a liquid description of what kundalini is. The serpent.
yeah. I would love to talk more about the esoteric details of the in ancient Egypt, it's called the wedjet, which is the winged serpent, and then there is the vulture, which is Nekbet. The symbolism of that is denoting the same process, but because I have access to it in detail, I'm preparing like a much detailed presentation with pictures to talk about the esoteric details of that journey, and if it's aligned to be shared publicly, I would of course love to share more about that as well. I'm sort of sensing the field and who's ready for what, and
So
just
next
trying to
time,
align.
Dalia is going to have an amazing set of pictures too. This is
Yes, I hope. Yes, that's the plan. But yeah, so we went and did work in the park, and then he took me to where the cemetery is. And as he's walking, he's scanning the field and he's collecting trapped plasma, which is essentially either lost souls, but especially the stubborn, which I call stubborn ones, which is the non-fractalizing plasma beings. Let's just call them like like what some people could refer to as demonic entities or ghosts, or it's essentially trapped plasma that's not in fractality. So it wreaks havoc in the field.
Yeah, affects fertility.
Right.
Professor Ralph talks about that for agricultural. In places where too many people died in the war and the ghosts are still in the land, you have all kinds of problem with health and fertility. So Dalia is now talking about actual work in a graveyard near the Berlin Wall, right? Yes.
Yes. And so he went in to collect these entities with the hand, and it's a collection. It's almost, really think of it like really a very long snake, and he's sort of wrapping it around his scepter, let's sort of speak, around my hand, my right hand. And I'm walking in the street because I'm taking some of these entities from the park, because there are a lot of lurkers in the public parks. These entities, they would often go to the parks and sort of live off drug addicts who sleep in the park, or children, or we'll talk about the children later. But essentially, they're parasitic in nature, right? They're parasitic in nature because they're not connected to the source. They don't have an energy source because they're not in fractality, and so they're disconnected. They have to get it from someone else or another living being.
Exactly. And Stefan Cardino talks about that extensively in the older churches in Europe, how many of them have plasma parasites there. And to understand that, if you have no way of expressing your bliss, you might need parasites, but ultimately.
Yeah. Ultimately, you can really vibrate in a frequency of fractality and be resonant. And essentially, this is our target here, right? To understand and to know that how to live in bliss frequency.
And we began to suspect this in some detail when Medrick here in South France said he was several times able to release stuck ghosts using the plasma to therify, which we know that frequency signature, the same one that triggers lucid dreaming, creates that implosion, which allows the plasma entity who is stuck to implode and then embed in the array successfully, as it were, ascend.
Definitely. But some of these beings do not want to be fractal, and they do not want to embed, and they're very stubborn. Same thing as like if there's a drug addict and that they could get help, but they don't want to get help, and they want to stay in this coiled serpent feeding on itself until extinction. It's self-negation. This is really the threat that the earth is going through at the moment, which is self-cancellation and self-negation.
Eros versus Thanatos in Jung's terms, but yes, sorry.
Yeah. So I want to finish the story of the graveyard, collecting these entities, and we walked until the gate of the cemetery, which was locked. So architecturally speaking, the gate is locked, is not open, and the wall is right there. So some of these souls are actually lost souls, and they couldn't find an exit because the wall was right there.
Berlin Wall. I mean, if this is archetype.
Yeah, a literal wall. Was built right, across the street, and with all that it carries, with all that it means, right?
Emotional baggage.
Exactly, the trauma and the disconnection and the violence there, the separation, the anxiety, all of that will cause some of these souls to be lost and vibrating chaos. So what we did is I higher self opened a gateway, a portal. And at the same time, the sun was like sort of coming through from the clouds. It was such an epic scene, I have to say. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful moment because at some point, and honestly, I'm observing what's happening because I have no idea what's happening. I'm doing it. It doesn't mean I'm watching what I'm doing to be able to understand what is happening, because I'm not managing any of this. I'm not controlling any of this. And so relinquishing control is very important also in this embedding. So, and trust. And so he was, at some point, he was calling all of these lost souls to exit. And I could feel like the wind was starting to move, and I could feel like a sense of upliftment, like a great opening is happening in the field. And I could see and feel like, sense these souls are going and are exiting through that gateway. And so how do you know your results? And I know this is a common thing because it happened with other shamans as well. When I've talked to them, they also told me they witnessed the same thing. So before, when I was walking, it was I don't know, a Monday morning or something. People are walking around very like sad. Like you could feel that there's just the weight of the world and they're very depressed. Everybody's just walking, almost like Walking Dead in a way. And then as soon as this whole process is done, all I'm seeing are smiles on their faces, particularly like I remember two women. They were just walking and just smiling. And, it was such a clear contrast that you could see evidence that the field has lifted, that these souls, I was really happy, especially for the lost souls that just were lost. They couldn't find their way. And so after that, we went around the block. We worked through the wall itself outside of the cemetery. And I kept doing that work with a number of cemeteries. The other work that and of course, the park that's close to where I live, this has become just like sort of my home base in terms of like, I can go there and be in more fractality, and Thoth then feels more invited. The reason we create temples for these beings is because a certain level of fractality, sanctity is needed for them to be able to vibrate into that larger aura and be present.
Exactly.
And so because of my day-to-day reality, oftentimes I do not find places in the city where Thoth can be in fractality and be fully present. So I have to really be able to create a place in nature where he can feel that way, where he can be in full presence. And so this park, it has a lake, and I did some work there. That's I love it. Like at some point we were I wanted to bring the sun, so I initiated the work. He would often initiate the work and tell me what to do, but at this time it was me because I needed sun, because winter is coming and Berlin is really cloudy and dreadful, and I needed sun. And so I worked for about 30 minutes, which is very taxing kind of work, to create a field of fractality. And I could see the blue skies and everything. The clouds have started to part and everything. And the sun later came. It was not like instant, but later the sun came and shined. But what was really interesting is the same day at night, there was a gray heron that appeared in front of the lake. And I have pictures of that I can share.
You showed me. Symbol of Thoth.
Yeah, well, it's actually a symbol of Ra, which is the sun god, and his presence, because I wanted to bring in the sun, that, and they're all the same family. Thoth and Ra is the same family. The symbol of Thoth is an ibis, but the gray heron is Ra. And so, which I didn't know before, I just had to look it up and see, like, is there, because it seemed like a very odd presence. Like there was no birds there at all, but there's this single gray heron. And I noticed that the lotus flowers have opened up too, have bloomed out of season. This is end of October, and they're not meant to bloom in that weather. So all of that happened in the same night, and then the day after, and the gray heron stayed exactly where he was, and he started to grab some attention, and people started to photograph him, and Thoth came in, and he felt protective, and he had to shoo him away because he was getting too much attention. And so he shooed him, and he went on a tree, and he stayed on that tree. And anytime I would go visit, I would find him hidden on that tree. So it just was a great confirmation of the work, the potential of that kind of work. We're talking fractality, we're talking bloom, we're talking This is great for agriculture. This is great for just,
lucid dreaming, for embedding ancestor memory. It's all there.
Yeah, harmonic living,
the array has blossomed like a flower.
Yeah. So it was incredible. And then other moments, I would go to the children parks, and that's he had already told me that the 5G towers are placed near schools on purpose, and the frequencies they carry are soul snatching frequencies, unfortunately, and they're meant to target the pure souls of the children. And he had told me this before I even arrived to Berlin, and he was talking in general, not just in Berlin, but everywhere. And I went into the children parks one by one, and I noticed the same pattern, and I took pictures to see like, oh, here is the tower. Here is a tower right there, right across the street from a children's school or a children's park. It's so noticeable. There's no denying it. And I would also go and create a protective field, cast the net. Well, there is a process to it. So he would cast the net over the entire field before we start working with the entities that are inside, because there are entities. And I've noticed in, let's say it's a large park, where the playground is where they're most concentrated, these parasitic entities. And so I would cast the net over the entire park and then go collect these parasitic entities and give them an opportunity to fractalize and be a fractality. Most of the time, they're very stubborn and they do not fractalize. And this is where one of two things, it depends, but basically it's either you send them to the sun, or, because that's what happened in the beginning, or because I work at night as well, less attention and quieter, but at night he would open sort of a portal, and it's like obliteration of these beings. Reset, recycle.
It's like
they don't want to fractalize, recycle.
It's like a scene from the movie Flatliners where, if you didn't have pure intention, you get sucked down, as it were, as opposed to imploded up. And that we talk at length about the danger of 5G and electrosmog at physicsofsoul.com, because soul is specifically that ability to implode and radiate the coherent longitudinal EMF, the physics of lucid dreaming, and where you go when you die and dream. And so it makes total sense that, young people, the souls of young people are like glistening fruit to the worst parasites. That's the issue here. And this is the story of Earth right now, physicsofsoul.com, that if we don't start understanding how all these parasites are eating these souls, our kids are in trouble. And I'm delighted that you're able to tell these stories. That's great.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate, sad reality what's happening right now, and the amount of decay to human souls. And so this leads me to the message, and maybe this will be the parting notes. There is a clear message that's coming from ʿAW-RE Horus, and it has to do with the shift. I'll try to channel this as clearly as I can without distortion. So what people refer to as end of days, what he basically showed me is where humanity is heading to its own extinction right now. And if things remain the way that they are, this is the ultimate destination, which is extinction of humanity and a reset in terms of like climate catastrophes that are going to lead to human extinction and the destruction of the current collective memory as is. It's a great loss, but at the end of the day, if this is what humanity is choosing, then this is their path, and this is what's going to happen. And there is a window of time. He gave me the number 23. So there is a window of time before total collapse or total extinction. And what he showed me is like time is flexible in terms of like, it depends on whether things escalate or de-escalate, because everyone has self-responsibility and everyone has choice. So it could be closer or it could be further. It depends on free will, right? But as of now, 23 is the number, which could mean, and it could mean 23 years, or it could mean that there will be escalations in 23 months or 2.3 years, or it's sort of a ratio that you can just build on and understand that it happens in cycles. And at every point, you either get closer to the catastrophe or you get further away. But at the end of the day, he said, if humans were to remain on the same path, on the same choice, headed to extinction, humanity, the extinction of humanity, it's going to be done in 230 years, meaning in 230 years, which is 2254. It will be already done. It will be already over by that time. So this is kind of the number that I was able to get from him. This was the message. Also makes sense because of the 52. This is a Thoth number, and he promised something around that number. And he told me that by 2254, it will be already done, which means that maybe 2252, something major will happen. Maybe this is the, who knows, you know, the final.
Yeah, there's a very kind of fixed window here within which major turning has to occur or else. And this is a natural recycling process. There are gene pools all over the universe which are recycled regularly. And whether we choose to implode through that recycle and become immortal or be recycled like plowing a field, this is our choice. And I think we should work a little bit now to translate that into what practical actions are implied. One of the things.
Yeah. Totally. But before the practical, this could be our life's work then. Like hopefully we're able to transmit the message, the teachings, the science, and the practical. I bring in the practical, you bring in the science and the theory, and that combination makes it accessible for people. And I really love and appreciate that about our dynamic. And we're not the only ones that are spreading this message, but I feel like it is the final countdown. There is still more to this message because I was giving more details. So like you said, it's inevitable, right? It is inevitable. I want to say that the amount of distortion, we're talking about distortion as in soul decay, as in parasitic leeching, feeding on soul via, let's say, AI or social media or technology, or even demonic entities or whatever, like the source of this distortion, that it's essentially, like we said, it's self-negation. Think of it as self-negligence, people who have suicidal thoughts, people who want this all to end, nihilistic thought. It comes from that place, but also yeah, it is self-negation and self-negligence as a simple essence, but this is where it gets a little complicated. So the 2/3 of the earth is already distorted. It's already, he showed me like a black goo, and there is still some life blue left, or
A few bright spots. Yeah.
Say that again.
Bright spots.
Yeah, there's still some.
Yeah.
Some that are at least a third. So I saw that it's a 2/3 third thing, which 2/3 is already distorted. And that's not a good ratio at all. But this is the reality that we're in. So the majority is already gone. We're talking people who are operating from robotic existence.
Soullessness.
Soullessness, exactly. Soullessness, precisely. And so essentially, this has everything to do with climate change, and this has everything to do with natural catastrophes. In a way that if the whole planet is soulless, it will collapse on itself, basically. Soul, the gold, the fact that the earth has gold is an indicator that there is soul soul can be fractalized here and embedded to be part of the galaxy, to be part of the Milky Way galaxy, to be connected. But if it's self-collapsing, feeding on itself, not in fractality, is unable to be connected, and it will have to be recycled in that way.
It will create electrical resistance, which is the precise point of physics of soul.com. If you can't embed in the array, now that you not lucid dream or have a soul, but it means that gravity gets dizzy, atmosphere gets dizzy. There's nothing centripetal or negentropic of Gaia. It's the same physics.
Thank you, Dan. Exactly. It comes down to physics.
Absolutely.
It's not just we're trying to warn people about catastrophe and disaster to scare them off, but it's essentially your own choice of how you live your life has ripple effects on the survival of the planet.
Exactly. Because if you get centripetal or get dead, as we would say, and they even said, you know, why part of the reason Atlantis sank was so many people were deprived of freedom, misuse of crystal technology. Today, that would be probably equivalent to billions of parents, including encouraging their kids to be full-time with Bluetooth in their ears and iPads, iPhones in their face, and absolutely scrambling their aura and therefore their soul.
Yeah. And so we know from the story of Enki and Enlil that there are two parties, one that are pro-humanity and want humanity to keep existing. We can go back to read the original story of Noah's Ark, which is where the Bible got its story from, all of the Bibles. So, and not a lot of people know that, unfortunately. So there is still a lot of gaps to be connected. But what I'm trying to say is we do know that there are two parties, one pro-humanity and believes in humanity's will to illuminate and be in luminous being fractalized and to be part of the galactic culture. And what Horus showed me when I was him, well, he didn't show me because, like I said, I am him in my soul essence, my true form. Who I am is Horus. Thoth shows me things because I'm connected to Thoth as my higher guide, but Horus is who I am as a soul essence. And when I've seen myself in my true form, I was not on Earth. Like I said, I'm a space traveler. And Thoth showed me that Horus is one of the Pleiades, the sisters, the seven sisters. So he's one of the stars in the Pleiades. And from that galactic consciousness, when I was able to transcend my human existence and be able to see the truth of who I really am, which came to me after years of asking that question, I wasn't able to see my true, well, through my human brain. The closest I could get is to see the bird, the falcon, the birdman. And what I've seen is there are pyramids in the Pleiades. Mm-hmm. So the pyramids on Earth, this is sort of the brand of this family.
Yeah, Hermes.
Yeah, they built pyramids.
Yeah.
Gravity
diode, grid makers, wireless power, and a lot more, like exactly. How to embed in the physics of soul.
Yeah, but also connecting the galaxy.
Mm-hmm. I see.
It's connecting the universe, connecting the galaxy to itself. It's like an electric circuit. Yeah. So you go to planets that are fractal, that have potential to be soul embedded and luminous. And then you connect them, you build culture, and then it becomes part of the family, you know, and so on and so forth. So he showed me that there are pyramids, that the original pyramids are in the Pleiades. The Earth ones are sort of like a mock-up for the ones that are there, and it's sort of their signature, their family signature. And in that galactic presence, the Earth reality was very narrow and very limiting for that galactic culture, which is much broader and richer and fantastic, you know, advanced, let's just say. And being on that galactic soul essence, I perceive Earth reality. You know, you're in a house, I don't know, $1 million house, let's say. This is kind of like a toy house that, you know, you would give to children. You know how children would have fake kitchens and fake toy kitchens that they sort of play with to try to emulate the adult life? Our houses are pretty much like fake toy houses. And as you know, compared to the galactic reality that we're veiled from, most of the humanity is veiled from its connection to the larger galactic reality.
And body, and the real meaning of temple, for example. Exactly, to embed in a very large body, very large. I'm reminded of when Lovelock wrote the software for the Sim Earth computer game for what happens when you plant dolmen pyramids on planets. According to the software, does your planet, he says, yes, your planet evolves more rapidly at the hazard of premature burnout of resources. So your planet's like imploding faster. They call it gravity diode. They call them the Hummer, the pyramids from the book 2/3. That's the title of the book, by the way. So suddenly, now
wow.
Yeah, it's the name of the book by David Myers, David Percy, goldenmean.info/Babylon, Babylon, about how they use pyramids as gravity diodes for the Hummer, embedding in the galactic array. All this fits so perfectly. And so the happily ever after is.
I get mind blown by when things connect like that. So there is more to the story. Maybe we can go to it. We can go about it the next time, because it's much more details about the algorithm and the AI, the role of the AI. What purpose is it serving? Because it's a very important factor in this equation, and there's a real function for it. And we can talk about that in detail probably in the next time. Will be better. But the happily ever after, it's so important to end on the happily ever after. So thank you, Dan. Before we escalate some more. Well, the happily ever after is there's choice. And you can choose to be luminous and have be shareable. Have shareable waves, have stuff that you can serve humanity with love and pure intention and vibrate from a loving heart, regardless of how other people treat you. And I'm not saying sacrifice yourself, because this Piscean age inheritance of self-sacrifice, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is be strongly resonate in your truth frequency and connect to your soul and connect to your higher self. Learn how to embed in your higher self array so that you are guided in these very trying times. That's just on a very brief.
Happily ever after. And it reminds me of Jasmine teaching people, well, step number X for learning to live without having to eat ever is you need to spend the majority of your day doing whatever it is that you believe is your highest level of service, like as an imploding charge, the real recipe for immortality. So there you go.
Totally. Yeah. Living from soul is a whole way of life, and it will require a different mentality. So I guess you can start asking yourself, or people can start asking themselves the question, what can I do to live more from soul and connect with my heart essence, connect with my soul essence and my truth frequency, double T truth, and, connect with my own higher guidance. Who's my higher self? Who am I really? It's really an act of seeking. But we will present more practical tools in time. I feel like this is something that we can, explain more about in detail in more practical, I guess, practices of how you can be in that, be embeddable.
High for bliss. But that is a perfect climax for here. Thank you so much, Dalia, for your courage and your bravery to see these things. If you can't do it, teach it. I mean, if you can't teach it, do it. You're doing it. I was teaching it.
It works out, really. It's perfect.
Courage.
Thank you, Dan.
It's been a blessing. To be continued.
We continue.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.